All right, so we will keep going with our design using primitives and other different tools in this lesson. And I think we can go ahead and put a face on our character. I usually like to throw in some eyes pretty quickly in like within the process because it usually gives the character some form of life and personality, which then can help you spawn some other ideas as we move along beyond that. So yeah, we will hop into cinema and start doing that immediately. All right, so obviously I want some form of big round eyes. So naturally, the best shape to start with would be a sphere, as with the head. So we will come over here to our primitives again. I'll press and hold, and I will create a sphere. And it will obviously become very big to begin with. Before we even move further, we can go ahead and increase the segments. Since the eyes will be a bit smaller than the head, I won't need as many segments, but maybe 32 will be enough for us at this stage. I'll just kind of go ahead and scale down the sphere before we even put it up into the face. And I'll just go ahead and move it up like this and move it out like that. And since we do have our head group here, I can actually just pull this sphere into our null. And we'll go ahead and actually look at the coordinates while we're doing this. So currently, this sphere are displaying the coordinates while being within the world environment. So if I set y, for example, to 0 now, it will hop down to the 0 position within the world, which is at the center of our scene. So if I go ahead and undo that and actually drop our sphere into the head group, you can see now that the coordinate value actually changes. This actually displays the local coordinate within the group that it's being placed within. So if I were to change this position y now to 0 while being within the head group, you can see now that we're actually placing the sphere at the center of the y-axis within the head group. So like this. And that's kind of exactly what we want to do. And that's a really fast way of just creating a new object and then dragging it within the group that you're going to place it within, zeroing out the precision and the rotation so we have a clean slate to work on. And obviously we want our face to be symmetrical, which won't be happening when we're working like this. What we actually can do to work in a symmetric workspace is create a symmetry object. And before we actually do that, I'll go ahead and turn off our line shading here because they're a bit obstructive. So I'll just go ahead and switch to regular Grad shading like this. And I'll come over here to this little green circle here with the edges around. And if I click and hold, you'll see the symmetry object, this little butterfly icon here. So if I let go when I hold this, you can see that it pops up at the top of our objects panel here. And that's fine, but there is an easier way of adding an object like a symmetry object, and that is by actually selecting the object that you want to apply the symmetry object to, come to the symmetry object again, and then hold Alt, like we did when we created the group. So we hold Alt and then release on the symmetry object, and that will actually put the symmetry object at the position of the sphere. So currently, if I were to, for example, move the sphere out in the y-axis or in the x-axis here, you can see now that we have a symmetry object working like we wanted to. If this doesn't happen for you, we can come into the symmetry object and take a look at the parameters here. Maybe your mirroring plane is at a different axis, so maybe try and switch these around. As long as you have your symmetry object displaying the eye on the other side of the face, that's good. And since we did apply it as a parent of the sphere, it should appear right in the center of our head. So the X position should be at 0, which is what we want. So perfect. So if I were to, for example, create another object within this symmetry object, like for example, we will want to add a pupil to our eye, because right now we're just doing the actual eye shapes. We will add another sphere to this. But if I were to add another sphere, so if I were to, for example, control drag and drop the sphere in, this other sphere won't be affected by the symmetry object. And to work our way around that, we can just easily go ahead and group our sphere within the symmetry object. So if I go ahead and hit Alt-G, you can see now that we have created a group for the sphere. And I actually want the null here under our symmetry to be at the center of the symmetry, so it's not at the original position we would first put our eye, because I'm probably going to move things around a bit, and I don't want this to be the origin position of everything that will be placed in our face. So I will actually go ahead and zero out the position X of our null here. So I'll just set that to 0, and that will snap back our sphere. So we just go ahead and move this out again somewhere around -8 centimeters, something like that. And we can actually go ahead and call this our face symmetry, because this is basically every like symmetrical shape of our face will be placed within this null. And with that, obviously, you can see that our eyes are very large and are bulging out a bit. So the way I usually like to do eyes in cinema is to make a sphere and then just scale it down within the Z. So make sure that you have our sphere selected, and I'll go ahead and scale down the sphere in the Z axis. I'll scale it down to around 0.1 centimeter, or 0.1 actually. And I'll also just go ahead and move this in somewhere around here, just so it's not as far out from the face. And I don't want the eyes to be placed like goggles like they are right now. I want them to be a bit more aligned with the shape of the head. So if I just go ahead and activate our rotate tool, I'll just go ahead and rotate it to somewhere around maybe -10 degrees. Just something like this. Just a slight rotation so it's following the face just a bit. And yeah, obviously we want some pupils for our eyes. So if we come over here to our original sphere again, I'll go ahead and drag it down and just make sure that it's still within our face symmetry. I can just go ahead and pull this out just slightly like that. And I can actually put it within our original eye shape. And obviously we want the pupil to be a bit smaller than the original eye shape. So I'll just set it to 5 centimeters. And I'll just move it in just a bit, something like this. Yeah, that's nice. Maybe a bit less, like that. Yeah, I think this is looking really nice. I do love these like massive eyes with these really big expressive pupils. I love that. I think we actually can go ahead and increase the segments a bit, because we are seeing some subdivisions here. And even though we will view our character from afar here, it might just be best to add some segments for safety. So I'll just make sure that we're selecting both of these. I'll hold Shift, select both, and I'll just set this to maybe 64. Like that. Great. And I'll actually move our pupil in just a bit. Maybe somewhere around there. Yeah. And I mean, if you don't want a sphere for an eye, which I mean totally makes sense, this is completely up to you. You can add just another shape to this. So if I were to, for example, like some like pill shaped eyes, we can come over to our primitives and we can actually create a capsule. Which I mean, sometimes I use these as eyes. They do give a very interesting expression. But I'll come over here and drag this capsule into our sphere here, and I'll just go ahead and zero out all of these different parameters here. Just 0, 0, 0, and I'll just set these to 1, like that. Perfect. And I'll grab my scale tool and just start to scale this down like that. And I'll just go ahead and deactivate our sphere just for now, just to kind of show how you can do this. And I'll just go ahead and slightly reconfigure this this capsule. While I'm moving like within another parent like this, you can see how if I hit W, this little globe here appears, and if I hit it again, this cube appears. So this basically means that either I'm moving the capsule in the world axis, which is the X, Y, and Z of the like entire scene, or I'm moving it within the sphere that I'm placed it within right now. So since I have this sphere slightly rotated, I will want to move my capsule along the axis of this and not along the world axis, because then, I will basically move it outside of our original framework, basically. So as you can tell, if I do move it along the world axis, both the X and the Z will be affected, which I don't want. I want to move it along the object axis. So if I move it along the object axis along X, that will only be affecting the X axis. So just to give you a heads up while I'm kind of moving things around. But for example, if I wanted to do something like this with the eyes, that could be cool too. Something very cartoonish. Obviously, you would want to increase the segments on this too. Increase the cap segments like that. Yeah, I mean, this is not really the result that I wanted, but I completely understand if this is something that you want to try. That could be really cool as well. But yeah, I'll go ahead and remove this capsule because this is not the kind of eyes that I want for this particular project. So I'll just go ahead and delete that and reactivate our sphere. And kind of looking at it again, I think I want it to be a bit bigger actually. So I'll just go ahead and drag this out, maybe 6.5. Yeah, I like that a lot. And now I'll just move these in again. Yeah, okay, perfect. So I obviously also want some eyebrows to make the eyes a bit more expressive. And usually, like throughout this course, you'll see that I try and base my shapes on circles or spheres. Or like other round shapes. I kind of want this design to feel very precise and clean. And if you do use a circle or a sphere as a base shape, you kind of have this perfect radius that you're working with like all of the time. So even if you want to create, this mouth that has a slight smirk on it, we still want to base that on a sphere because then you get, the perfect curvature that you would get from a circle, for example. And that's what we will be doing with our eyebrows as well. Instead of using ourselves of a piece of geometry, we will be using ourselves of a spline, which is basically just a vector path within 3D. So we'll actually just go ahead and create that in Cinema, and I'll kind of explain as we go along so you understand what we're trying to do here. Okay, so we'll come back into Cinema, and if you hop over here to this rectangle shape here, so this is basically our spline tool set. So if you click and hold here, you'll get all these different spline options. So for this one, I want a circle. So if I press and hold over that and release, I'll get a circle spline. And we don't really see anything happening because it's just massive. So I'll actually just go ahead and scale it down just a tad, maybe to around, something like this, just to start with. And like before, we can just go ahead and place it into our face symmetry null. And I'll just go ahead and zero these values out like that. Perfect. And I'll just go ahead and roughly place it where I think the eyebrow will end up. So you can see how the spline is also being affected by the symmetry object. And like with the sphere, I'll also want to rotate this. So I just go ahead and copy this value, paste it in like that. So we have it on the same angle. Perfect. But before we move on any further, I'll just kind of show you what we're going to do with this circle, because naturally, as a spline within 3D, you can't really render that unless you add a specific effect or something, because we don't have any geometry. So we need to generate some geometry using some splines. So we can come over here to this little icon again. So if I press and hold, and I have this sweep, I'll make sure that I hold Alt and release on the sweep. Like that. And as you can tell, nothing really happens once you do that. And that is because you need another spline to act as like the shape that you will sweep along this circle. So if I were to add another circle, I'll just go ahead and create another one that will pop up at the top of our object panel here, where we want it to be above. So we want it to be within the sweep, but above the original circle. So I'll just release it here and you'll see what happens. Since it's so big, obviously this will this won't do. But if we scale it down a lot, so I'll just go ahead and select my scale tool and just drag and drag and drag. You can tell that it doesn't really matter where we place this circle because it's just getting swept around this shape. So it won't really matter where you put it within the scene. The only thing that matters is the shape of it. So we could even add, let's see, let's do a star. We can even add that as the sweeping shape. So this will act as the shape that you're sweeping around the circle, and this will act as the actual shape that is getting used as the path for the sweep. So just go ahead and undo this. Perfect. So I'm going to use myself of this to make our eyebrows. So I'll scale this down even more, maybe to like around 1.8 centimeters, like that. And we can also just go ahead and clip this sweep off a bit. So you have all of these different options within the sweep. So the first thing that we'll do is actually just try and clip this off at around a place like here. And we'll just go ahead and shorten this side as well to maybe somewhere around here. And I mean, obviously this isn't really the type of eyebrows that I want to be making, but we're going to do some more things to this to make it look a bit better. So the first thing that I want to make is kind of eliminate this massive curve that we're getting from the eyebrows. I'll just go ahead and scale this down to somewhere around 12 centimeters. And instead of using a perfect circle, we can use this as an ellipse, which basically means that if I just go ahead and deactivate our sweep here, you'll see what's happening. I can actually decrease this to just scale down the y-axis of this spline. So I'll set this to around 2 centimeters. So we have like this really flat but perfect bend that we have here. And I'll just go ahead and reactivate our sweep so we can see what this is doing. And now you're kind of understanding what I'm trying to do with this ellipse here. So I'll just set this to 2 centimeters. I'll go ahead and naturally move this up a bit like this. And now we're actually starting to get some expression out of this. And I'll go ahead and activate caps for this. So you can see that if we go ahead and head into our caps tab here and increase the size of this, you'll see that we're getting some roundings on the end of our eyebrows here. And I'll go ahead and increase the segments on this too, because 3 just won't be enough. So I'll just set this to maybe 10. I think that will do. And if you are getting unsure about how many segments you have within your scene, we can always go into our garage shading and see. And I do think that the distribution here is quite good, so I'll just keep this as it is. I do think that the eyebrows, they are a bit thick and uniform in the size. So I kind of want them to taper off a bit from this size to this size, so they get a bit thinner on the ends. So if I come back to object here, I can actually go down and expand this details tab here. And here we can kind of decide the kind of tapering of our eyebrows a bit. So I just kind of go ahead and drag these around and experiment with them, see what they're doing. So naturally we want this to be somewhere around here. I'll just go ahead and hold shift and drag this out somewhere around there, like that. And I'll just set it to maybe something around, we just want a slight taper. So you'll need to experiment with this and see what kind of result you're happy with. But I think I'll put it somewhere around here. And as you can tell, they're also pretty chunky. They are pretty thick. So I do want to scale them down just a bit, so they have the same kind of dimensions as our eyes. So if we have our sweep selected, I'll come into coordinates. And I'll do the same as with the eyes. I'll just scale this down just a bit. And I'll set it to 0.25. And this is good. Yeah, this is starting to look like something. Great. He or she is looking a bit too pissed. So if we kind of angle these, or they're looking a bit grumpy. I want it to look badass and look very confident. So maybe if I just rotate them slightly, try and experiment with the expression by moving them up and down. Maybe not having them as far down on the eyes does a bit to the expression. I kind of enjoy the expression that this is getting. And yeah, if you for example were to want to move them way down here, naturally you're gonna have the top of your eye shapes pop out from the eyebrow. And to kind of avoid this, there is a pretty simple way to use a deformer to kind of clip these off without actually having to go in and delete certain parts of the eyes. Because we obviously want to work smart and not delete anything just because we don't want them right now, because we want to be a bit more flexible and change things as we go. So if you do want to have the eyebrows further down, you can use a melt deformer to kind of clip these off. So if I just go ahead and come over to our deformers panel again, I'll press and hold, and you'll find this like little ice cream melting thing here. So if I just release there, I'll go ahead and position it under my, or within my eye shape. I'll go ahead and zero out the positions and zero out the rotation, but I won't do anything with the scale because that might mess up the effect of the deformer. And obviously this is not what I wanted to do. But if we hop into our strength property here, set that to 0, you can kind of see what the melt deformer is doing. It just melts the objects basically. But we're not going to use it for that, so we'll set it to 0. And we can actually go ahead and activate our rotate tool and just rotate it all the way around like this. And now you can kind of start to see what we want to do. So if we actually just move this up a bit, you can start to clip off certain parts of the eyes that you don't want to be visible. This one is looking really angry. And that's not something that I want for my effects. I'll just go ahead and undo all of this and go back to the place that I was pretty happy with. Something like this. Yeah. Maybe we can move the eyebrow in just a little bit like that. Yeah, great. So with that done, I want to move on creating our mouth to just give it a bit more personality and some life. I think the spacing between our eyes and our collar is a bit too tight right now. I don't think we're going to be able to fit the mouth. So I'll actually just go ahead and select our symmetry object, just move it up a bit to a place where we think that we can roughly fit our mouth in. I think that will be enough. One tool I haven't showed you yet that I really like and that I enjoy using is the doodle tool. And it does exactly what you think it does. It lets you doodle within the viewfinder. So I'll actually go ahead and activate it by using a function that I use and a lot of more experienced Cinema 4D users use, which is pressing Shift-C. It allows you to basically search for any like tag or object that you want to add in Cinema 4D. So if you, for example, search for a sphere, if you hit enter, you're going to create a sphere. And the reason why I show you how to do this for the doodle tool is just because I've never even found it in the actual Cinema 4D user space. So that's basically why I just search for it. But this is a really handy way to look for things within Cinema if you're not sure of where they are, but you know the name of it. So I just go ahead and press Shift-C, and I'll just type in doodle, and you get this thing called Doodle Paint. And I just go ahead and double click on that. And now you have this little drawing cursor thing here. So if I, for example, come over here and I draw a mouth like that, perfect. You basically get a doodle object for the perspective view here. So we can just go ahead and deactivate this when we're happy about the mouth placement and stuff. But I usually just do this just to try out different mouth shapes, just see kind of what would work. And from my sketches, I kind of did something like this for my mouth, which is something that I want to pursue. I mean, if you do want to make a mouth like this, I can also show you how to do that. That's not really the vibe that I want to go for. So I'll just kind of try and make this slight smirking mouth, something like this. And once you're kind of happy with the doodling that you've been doing, you can just go ahead and select it and deactivate it or just delete it. I'll delete it because I want things to look clean in my object panel. So I'll just delete that. And since we're basically just going to do the same thing as we did for our eyebrows, we can just go ahead and duplicate our sweep here that we use for the eyebrows. So I use Control and drag this outside of the symmetry because I don't want the mouth in specific to be affected by the symmetry. I want this to be this like tilted smirk. So I just drag and drop this outside of the head. And I'll just go ahead and activate our rotate tool. And I'll just actually zero out the position and rotation, so we're getting placed at the center of the head, something like that. And it will disappear now, but we'll go ahead and just move it out of there. And I can actually just go ahead and reset these attributes here. So I'll just drag this up. So we have the same thickness along the entire mouth. I'll go ahead and change the thickness because I don't want the mouth to be this big. I just want it to be this slight like drawing on the face. So I'll actually just go ahead and set this to maybe 1. Yeah, I think that's gonna work. I'll go ahead and rotate it 180 degrees, something like this. Now you can actually start to see what we're gonna do. And I think I want just a bit more curvature on it, so we can do that by increasing or actually decreasing the radius of the width, something like this. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. And let's see what we can do if we go ahead and adjust these. Yeah, this is starting to look cool. And then maybe I want to move it out to somewhere around here. So I'm thinking that we're going to basically view our character from this angle. So I want to make sure that our mouth isn't getting hidden by this color. Obviously, these are things that we can adjust as we go on. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and just try and make sure that while I'm designing, I'll just keep these things in mind. So I'll also just maybe move up the eyes just a bit so we have some space to work here. Something like this. And I'll just kind of go ahead and see if we can tweak this curvature just a bit, maybe even rotate it, something like this. It's feeling a bit big, maybe. Just slightly scale that down. Just try and tweak the shape of this until I'm a bit more happy. This is kind of completely up to you what you want to create in terms of what kind of expression you want to make. But I think I'll leave it at that for now. And as I said, we can always like come back and tweak things as we go on. But yeah, I think this kind of expression is something that I enjoy watching. So I think we'll. Oh right, yeah. I actually wanted to show you how to make just a slightly different mouth shape then. So if you, for example, wanted to make that classic anime smirking face, which is super nice, you can actually just use the same sweep thing here, but using a rectangle. So if I go ahead and create a rectangle, I'll just go ahead and make sure that we place it within the head. And I'll just go ahead and move it out, scale it down so we can view it. And I'll just decrease the size in the width a bit, make it a bit higher. And here's where the kind of smile comes in. So if I activate the rounding and just set this to max, you can kind of see what we're getting, something like that. And if I were to just go ahead and deactivate this original smile circle that we have and just pop this in there, and I'll just go ahead and zero out the rotation and the position because that's a bit off for this one, something like that. Yeah, and then we can adjust the features on this. I'll actually just go ahead and do that. Rotate it. Yeah, you kind of get what I'm trying to do with this. I'm just shifting things around, moving around the parameters that we've already touched before. So this is nothing new really. But yeah, this is a completely different expression than the one that I wanted to originally make. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's good for you to kind of know how to make these different mouth shapes. But I'll go ahead and undo everything just so I get back to the state where I was. And I'll just delete this rectangle. Okay, great. I mean, you can go ahead and tinker around with the face as long as you want. I'm happy at this stage, and I think we can kind of move on to the next parts of the course. which will be building on the rest of the body. And I mean, if you want to tweak the face later on, it's super easy to just go back and do that. So don't feel locked in, but rather feel motivated to keep designing and working on the character. So I'll see you in the next lesson.